Okay. You'd think I know how to do the streaming thing by now, wouldn't you? 5 years and all. Got to log into my chat on my prompter so I can't see the chat. One day I shall master it. Okay. Uh-oh. Don't think streamer bot's connected properly. Let's test. So, do I see? Oh, there it is. It is there. Now I've got to figure out where the mouse is. Better. Morning, daughter. How you doing? How's things? So to get chat working across YouTube and Twitch, I use Restream, their chat function, but I have to log into the stream. So when I start up my stream, I have to go into their dashboard and say create an event. And then it puts the Restream bot messages in my chat. So I have to ignore them users every single day. So that I just see the individual chats. So it's quite the setup. But it does allow me to see the chat in a readable way. The speaker arrived. Nice. Nice and early. Speakers. I haven't used speakers in a long time. I was watching us. Oh, Rambling Geek was saying in his Discord the other day that he has two speakers either side of his monitor. He has a big monitor, and he listens to most stuff through speakers. I've just got so used to headphones and earphones at this point. Like, I prefer earphones for this. I mean, I'm not listening to music or anything here, but I am if I listen to stuff. So while I'm sat at this computer and working, I prefer earphones. If I'm gaming, headphones. But I haven't used speakers in a long time. I think I have a pair in a box somewhere. Buying a speaker to play music, it seems excessive. Yeah. But at the same time, I don't want to play music through TV. So I got a Sony, like one of the little music player things, the current gen of Walkmans, I assume, and it plays high def music, and the quality difference listening to that through what you normally listen to is massive. So I'm definitely a fan of, if you enjoy the thing that you're listening to or watching, etc., to get the right equipment, because I think it just allows you to enjoy that thing a little bit more. And there's quite the difference when you hear different sounds or different, when you can pick out those differences, it's much more enjoyable. But a TV is never a good speaker, so my goodness me. Either JetBrains needs to figure out to buy a YouTube subscription and play my music through that. Yeah. 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 So what I'm saying now is JetBrains either needs to figure out a in-place reload of a plugin, or GitHub needs to update their plugin less, or provide a system that doesn't require an actual update to the plugin every single time, because I seem to update the GitHub plugins every single day, and sometimes they conflict, so then they're not actually working. But anyway. Also did another event storming in my stock application, which never got built. Oh, nice. How'd that go? Starting to think the practice is to get to MVP fast. Now, when you say MVP, you mean from the event storming perspective, or you mean the actual development perspective? It's only kind of a tool for generating. It's only kind of a tool for generating ideas. Really, it shines when you pare down the events into just what's necessary. I mean, that's. Sorry, I'm a bit groggy this morning. Trying to think about how to put my words here. So, I mean, realistically, you always want to get to MVP fast, right? Because MVP fast means you can prove out what you need to prove out and build on. The problem is that we oftentimes build out and then stack on and don't actually think about the rest. Well, MVP means you have the minimum amount of product, right? But you've got to. But the problem is with MVP is you either build it so you can add the features later, which is harder, so it slows down your MVP, or you build it so you get the features in there and don't consider the cost later. I find I'm just feature wandering without a working product, right? And that's a risk I run with this, being very frank, right? Because I know what I aim for. But what is a required feature versus what is a necessary feature, right? Versus what is a nice to have, and it is a risk I definitely run with this product, which is why I'm focusing on one area, and that'll always be the case. I mean, the cab app. There'll always be more not in it. Yeah. Rambo Geek, thank you for the resub. 7 months. Appreciate it. Afternoon. Hope you're well. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to sit down and say, hey, because we all do it. We think, oh, I've got an idea for a project, and you sit down and you start coding towards the piece you want. If the piece you want is actually really far away, you often get discouraged and give up, because you've got an end goal in mind, but to get there might take a lot of coding and a lot of practice and a lot of development. There might be things you don't understand how to do in the way, so that's why you give up on personal projects normally. With work products, it actually works the same way. It's just you're not the one getting bored, right? So yeah, it's challenging to build software, but MVP is dangerous in that you could rush features out, and then you've got the problem of who dictates what features come next. This has been developing. The dev team has moved into their own office, so hopefully we'll be able to join a bit more often. Nice. That'd be good to have you in here. Maybe I have some features made, but it can actually do the thing. Yeah, because again, so a while ago, Deflux and I sat down, and we basically talked about this product, right? Because he was like, "You're building too much," because I had the if you remember, I do still have ticketing, stories, etc. in there. But we kind of talked through what is the actual minimum product that you need to deliver. But it's not just what do I need to deliver, it's what do I need to build to prove to people that this is different than what has come before, that this is a different focus and has the right tools to provide them what they need. So I kind of settled on the planning component as a focus. The problem I have now is that I've got to kind of decide what features are necessary to build up my vision, right? I do need notifications. I can't get by without notifications. It's a core concept of what I'm building, right? The review date stuff, this past due, current, upcoming, this is all core to my concept. Requirements gathering, this is all core. So I've got to determine that. And so event storming at this point might be a little bit more difficult if I try it on this. Especially if it disagrees with what I've already built. But it is a risk, right? Because if I deliver, but the problem is if I deliver this as MVP right now, let's say I put this out there and say, hey, you can actually track requirements. You can build these things out. You can add requirements to them, which you can't do because it doesn't work. You can add requirements and yeah, it'll all work. If I deliver that, I've then got to figure out, okay, now the hard part begins because now I've got to add features. Well, what does adding a feature mean? Or, well, it means adding some stuff in, changing some database. Oh, I've got to build all those tools. So you end up in this world of, you're now chasing adding features that customers are demanding that are paying for the software. So it can fundamentally change the direction of the software as well in a way that maybe you didn't envision. No, it doesn't. It often means though that you put it in front of people and you need people, to actually use it. So my plan for this is I want to get to a certain stage, and then there's a few people I've talked to that are interested in the concept that I want to say, hey, could you go and take a look and tinker with that and see if there's anything that you would change. There's one person who's specifically a project manager for a bank, for a large bank, and he's like, whenever you need some help, let me know. Yeah, right now, if this is a generic Jira, there's absolutely no value in this because it doesn't do anything different, right? And it's actually a lot worse. So I've got to get some of these concepts figured out. Like the projects, this kind of flexed a little bit in terms of, okay, well, actually, I don't need to associate a planning item specifically with a project, but I can use these as a labeling to say, oh, by the way, it's associated with these. So yeah, there's a lot more to do, including deployment and DevOps side. That terrifies me. So I don't know how to get to that part. I think that's, for me, I think that's the case. If I hit MVP for me is the one I can use to move the product forward, right? Definitely. MVP for a lot of people, especially in businesses, from my experiences, MVP is what can we give to users? And it's not like release it as a full product, but it is normally release it to customers that might be interested in trying it and working with it. But oftentimes we've used their real system. So they start to build a dependency upon it. You then can't just change it on a whim. Yeah, the cab company, I need a cab company to give it to and get the dispatchers to start using it. Yes. Yeah, you can't emulate that necessarily. So, yeah, you could use a stock trading app. Yeah, absolutely. So some things changed in here the last couple of days that I need to clean up. So let's stop running that. The Evercraft car thread start playing the game potentially. So last week when I was working on this project, there was a couple of challenges. The first one was dates, right? I needed dates to be returned down in UTC because my comparison of, oh, has this date changed, was off, because I was comparing UTC date to a date that was being sent down as a UTC. It was sending the UTC value, but with my time zone attached, so it was never the same. So I need to compare UTC to UTC. So first challenge was get the date to come down in the correct format. Easy, you'd think, right? But how do I do that without messing around with GraphQL? Because again, GraphQL, well, it's like this, right? So if I have dates in here, what it was doing was showing something like that, right? +4, something like that. So what I had to focus on was getting the date to come down in UTC, which they now are, right? The Zulu, right? That's what that is. So that was priority number one, get the planning items and all the dates coming down with that time. But at the same time, I chose to try and move this over to using entity framework rather than having these projections through the specifications, because then I'm not really, I'm taking the entry in and then manipulating it and enumerating it and returning it. Whereas if there's particular fields I want, I'm still querying everything from the database to pull down the particular fields. So on Friday, I think last week, I was struggling with that, but then someone said just at the end of the stream, they tried to provide the link, Raytheon, I think it was, provided a link for use projection, right? So that gave me the hint, and I went in, and yeah, that's what I need to do. So what use projection does is it kind of ultimately ends up in manipulating the query so you only select what you need. So if I ask for ID and name, it'll do select ID and name from table, rather than select ID, name, title, date added, last updated, etc. from table, and then only return that. So it kind of it passes those parameters forward as query parameters and just asks the data of that. So next challenge, my data wasn't in the right format, so I needed to be able to view the data. The database itself, right, without the views, was in the wrong style, because the database itself, here's the database, right? So tenants, projects, associated projects, requirements, planning items. So requirements has a direct link to planning items, but projects doesn't. So associated projects is through a linking table, and that makes that ever harder to use, because now I've got them squashed and I have to navigate down. And what that means is that passes down you have to pass down the understanding of the data schema to the end user, which is not ideal, because now my query requirements are on them. And I've still got a reservation here on this, because I still believe that the challenge here is I'm actually putting the ability to slow the database down onto the GraphQL endpoint. So if I know I'm the user right now, but if I allowed someone else to use the GraphQL endpoint, then they could potentially make the query particularly slow if they pulled in more data than expected, or they tried to navigate further down and pull it. So the query cost is kind of offloaded a little bit to them, which I don't like. So what I did is I created some views. And again, the GraphQL database is specifically for views, so it's not a problem to use views in this case. This database is focused on the read. If views are getting me the read, I don't have an issue with that necessarily. So I now have I do have a projects view still because there's a list of projects that we get. I have the associated projects view, which is now a joining of those two things. So it condenses that data into that linking table. This would have been normalized in the normal way, so this squishes that. And then I have a user's view, and again, everything's by tenant identifier to narrow down. And requirements, because requirements link to planning items, etc. What I have done, I believe, oh yeah, here's what I did. So one challenge is when I'm joining these things, joining on the GUID, which right now is an index, would be slower. So I did introduce in this one I introduced the ID. So on the user, you see I have ID. Over here on the GraphQL side, if I look at a user, I can't select ID, right? It's completely hidden from me, right? I can only select the identifier. And if I want to specify it as ID, I can do this. I can alias it. So this comes out as ID, but it really is the identifier column. So that allows me on the client side, I know I'm talking about identifier, but I'm going to call it ID because there's some Angular pieces, some NGRX pieces that actually require ID as a field. They can't get by with being told, oh, there's an identifier, by the way, not an ID. That won't run because it's not running. So I then end up with this manipulation where I say, okay, well, the field, ignore that field. So now when you ask for a user, even though it is a database object, right, I am actually returning the database objects here. I'm dictating what can be sent back. So again, this has a created by user, right? And it's an ID, but it doesn't need that. So it's linked, and the created by user ID doesn't have the ID still. Planning item, again, I ignore these because I actually return the GUIDs of these. And there we go. So now we can ignore those fields. So you can't actually ask for the core ID, but you can ask for the identifier. And the same way, planning item identifier here. This is ignored because on an associated project, you know the planning item. So why offer the planning item identifier? You don't need that. It's completely useless to you. So I can control and manipulate the data that is allowed to be seen. The date time problem. Wow, having lots of issues signing in. I can chat again now. Twitch. The date time problem I solved in a different way. So the planning items view, if we go to modify view here, I now specify that these are UTC. So what these come out as is actually time zone offsets. Being that I'm querying the objects directly out, I don't need to do anything on the code side. Back, grab coffee, tried to mess with the speaker, someone gave up. New toys. So yeah, these now return as UTC. The review date is always specified as a date, so I make sure that's converted to a date. So this view now presents the data in a useful form. I can pull the data I need, and these views allow me to control the data a little bit more closely, with the GraphQL side of things being able to dictate what fields and stuff are shown. So that allows me to clean that up and make sure I'm not exposing fields that I don't want to expose. So today what I need to do is go through and remove specifications where they're not required, right? So I've got all these specifications. Clean this up. So the view models, I don't need the view models. I don't need a lot of stuff. I'm still using the pooled DB context, so I am injecting the context still, and I set that up in line with what GraphQL with Hot Chocolate said. So this is injected, but it's injected as a pooled context, I believe. which means if two or more requests go, it'll, yeah. So yeah, I can now build this out a little bit more cleanly. And I kind of like it. It starts to make a little bit more sense here, because what I'm providing is quite a flexible API against the data. I created sorry, I just got to answer a text. What was I going to say then? I created two contexts. So I created a view DB context, which literally is just the views, but this way I don't have to specify them as views, but they're all read only anyway, right? So they are all specified as read only. And if I'm being realistic, I could actually specify in the options that this is a no tracking, but I actually specify it here right now. So I specify no tracking. So I'm just pulling the objects out. There's no tracking behavior attached. There's no proxies attached to it. It's all good. I'm using lazy loading proxies because that allows me to automatically include those. I don't have to, when I query the actual things out, I don't actually have to include the associated tables. They'll load when I ask for them. And yeah, so it does feel much cleaner. It does feel much tidier. Registering the types, that's good. So I've got the date times returning in the right form. The client side is generally working. It's querying the data fine. It's displaying the data fine. So all the queries are working. On the GraphQL side, on the client side, this, again, I can alias these so that the code that I've written that has ID everywhere doesn't need to change. I just say, okay, when I say ID, I actually want the identifier property, and I'll pass it back as ID. So this comes down in the right format, which is nice. It means I can alias everything. So yeah, I need to just remove this garbage now. So 6 usages. Okay. So these consumers do consume. So I'm going to move them there because they're specific to that. So planning item by identifier spec and planning item by identifier spec. So I'm going to delete these specs. Build. And I'm open to ideas. If anyone has any opinions of what I'm doing or questions, I'm happy to talk about this, because this is the sort of thing that I would normally kind of bounce off a team, because I think it's kind of different to what we normally do. So yeah, I'm more than happy to kind of go through this. Okay, I think I don't need anything but them. Let's have a look. Let's see what happens. Let's see. Okay, there we go. So now the consumers here are the notifications consumers. So these are, now this application starts to look a little bit cleaner, right? I really should move this to an extension, because this is actually pretty useful. So this is adding the auth component to the GraphQL. WebSocket. It calls WebSocket auth, so that GraphQL can actually authenticate over the WebSocket. There we go. So we got the query. We got the program. Added all the pieces. Register DB context. It's a pool DB context. This is needed as well. Add projections. So that tells it to go and do all those fancy things. But I think I'm okay for the GraphQL side there. And again, I'd be interested in anyone's opinions on this. GraphQL is still something that I think I'm learning. I think the benefit of what I'm doing here is I do have this specific view database, so I can manipulate this in any way I want. So it's okay for me to do these things. It just feels alien to what I've now done. Murad, thank you very much for the follow. I appreciate it. Welcome in. I haven't tried GraphQL before, very minimally. I think it's I'd probably just be against it because I generally don't like adopting things. Grumpy old dev syndrome. Again, I think great job. Thanks, Murad. I think I'm of the mindset that I'm willing to try new technologies, especially in this application. And I want to give them a good go. But I think sometimes we put the tool against the wrong thing. So in past, when I've used GraphQL, I've put it against the same data schema that my data model's coming from, right? So the thing that I'm updating is also the thing I'm querying, and I think that's where it doesn't work, and that's why creating the views seemed to be a good step, because it got rid of those unnecessary joins. It didn't expose too much about the database schema and allowed me to control the data that was in them. So yeah, my stance on new tools and a sizable project is convince me this solves something that is already solved and doesn't just add additional work. Isn't already solved. Yeah, okay. I read it the right way and then went back and messed it up. Adding tools for the sake of adding tools, yeah, I agree. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't at least consider. So what is my alternative here, right? My alternative to GraphQL here is to write a specific set of APIs, right? I can still use the ViewDB context. I can still use the views. I'd write a specific set of APIs. Agree. Obviously, I'm in a unique position here. I'm building a large project, but I have the flexibility to tinker. But yeah, but the problem is with trying stuff like this, you don't know what it looks like until you've used it against the system or a data set that's large enough to actually flex it, right? So my alternative here would be to go with the good old API approach, but then I've got these very static endpoints. I mean, it wouldn't be impossible. I could swap it all out. All that happens is these change to be query endpoints. But yeah, the risk becomes when you're working with a small project, but a tool that benefits on a larger scale, you need to kind of figure out what that looks like as well. So this is now sizable enough that there's enough data to demonstrate it well. If it was just a to-do list, then it might not demonstrate quite as easily. Always try things on side projects before you're pitching them at work. Yeah. It's very easy as a developer, especially in a team that's tasked with creating greenfield software. To jump on that bandwagon though, to try and whoa, it's our project, therefore we need to put our stamp on it. And I experimented earlier on, right? I used Couchbase in tickets, but we removed Couchbase because there were some challenges with how to get data to produce into there properly, and it created problems. So rather than stop on that lesson, because I was focused on planning, I moved away and used back to SQL. And in your case, how many side projects you're going to make? yeah. So let's get this committed. What changed? Yeah. Oh, projects outdated project settings. The NuGet packages. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to commit the view. Use context for GraphQL. Move specifications. So as always, if there's any questions, thoughts, opinions on this, if you're new to the stream, you're more than welcome to ask. I'm happy to show the project. Created views and it's read only and name only right now. But it could actually have its own connection string. It could configure them differently. So the consumers now uses the update context. So they are different contexts. And that way I can separate them and I can actually build them out differently. So the update context has the actual tables, whereas the view context has the views, but they're named the same as the tables for readability. Move ViewDB context to reader only. Version created update DB context to allow consumers to still added injections. Object types to remove. Okay, commit that. Now again, all this is part of the replace overlay, which is a lot more than I should have done. But it is updated NuGet packages. I am standing today, by the way, so if I seem more fidgety than usual, then it's because I'm stood up. Updated GraphQL queries with alias identifier. So it is intentional for the API to return identifier, because that's what it really is. I'm just alienating it as the ID on the client now, because it is it's getting stuck all the time now. The tooling works better with the ID. Motivation for coding has been harder for me lately. I think it's a combination of summer and the tasks at work are extremely unexciting, just inherently in the task. Oh, I know that one. So to me, because of what I'm doing in work, this is more energizing. And I do this at the beginning of the day so that I've not even started work yet, right? So I'm focused on something. I've got these things, like even the game stuff. Like I love playing with the game stuff. It's definitely interesting. But the last couple of days, I've been so mentally focused on this, on getting this to work. Because it kind of clicked. I hit that point where it clicked. Yeah, but I get the work thing, yeah. In another forum, someone said you shouldn't try to find meaning in work, but outside instead. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. I think you should care about your work. I think you should. It's hard to. I mean, you're being paid to do a job. So when you get the harder job, the harder to motivate yourself jobs, like it's cool. This is nice and fun because I'm exploring new things. I'm building new software. But if I deliver this product and now someone has a bug, I've got to go bug fixing. That's less glamorous, less entertaining. There's less to do. I can't go, oh, I could introduce this technology and fix everything, right? So there is an aspect to it that is harder for certain. And when you're being paid to do it, it is a job. But I get it. I have some of that stuff going on myself. It's fine. But I stay focused on this stuff. Like this is a project I care deeply about. It's a thing I care deeply about. So let's run it and see what it actually does now. So yeah, if you're new to the stream, you're more than welcome to ask about things. I'm happy to show the code. I'm happy to show around. This isn't an open source project, unfortunately. Having thought about that recently, it is a large application. It is not something that would benefit from me putting in the public domain anyway. I guess the people that kind of just do their job and it's not their focus, I'm slightly envious that they can put work down a lot easier. Yes. Yeah, some days I get that. There are some people that do it for a job and some people that love doing it, and it's harder to be the former. Afternoon, Mr. Jones. Thank you. I appreciate the constant reminder. What would I do without you? I at least remember the password now. I don't have to go and copy and paste it every time. Okay. So go in here. So I need a loading screen at some point. That'll be good. So everything loads. We can click on something. The data loads. We're good. The requirements aren't loading. Need a ban redemption here as well. Nah. It wouldn't mean much anyway, because he normally drops in and then goes for his walk or something. So it would it just ban him while he's not watching. Event Storm in the Evercraft cartridge is going to be very fun. There's a bunch of cool imaginary actors. Ah, nice. So, what focused you on event storming, Delta? Can I ask? So, event storming, if no one's aware, is a method of gathering requirements. Essentially, it's a technique of identifying the needs and requirements of a system. And Delta's gone through some work recently of exploring that. Oh no. Streamer mode. My boss, Ted, I went to one online conference where they talked about it, then I tried it and extremely liked it. Work is also less of an outlet than normal right now. Due to team member changes, people got promoted essentially. Ah. So you got fewer people to talk to it and do that sort of stuff with. I just need to take a quick break. I will be right back. You should link to the event storming thing though, Dota. Because that is a useful read. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that. And the lights in my face because I just sat down. Um, some people work less receptive than they should be, really. Okay, so you've got few people that actually are engaged in that sort of stuff. I get that. That's the cab coming in. It's a stock analysis. Nice. Nice. Which I have way less necessary domain knowledge on. As in, I understand how ordering a cab works fairly well. I don't understand how to pick stocks very well, though. Gotcha. I mean, that's one of the difficulties. Like, and that's why I don't do domain-driven design very much, right? Or don't attempt domain-driven design because, again, I feel that you become a domain expert by the time you've gone through something, and if you don't have the actual domain experts available to explore and to pick their brains, then you're kind of working. Even with the domain experts, right? I think the event storming thing works because you could actually explore those domain events in a collaborative way. And if you had a domain expert, then you'd be able to kind of pull those threads and dig down deeper. So you might actually get a useful domain model. If you're building software from scratch like this, I think by the end of this, I will be a domain expert. Or I'll know what I don't like and dislike even more. But yeah. With starts, I know some of the domain and I had to read bots to get it, but I'm going to be so lacking. I wonder if it would be useful. I mean, your general comfort with it when you finish will tell you whether you found it useful or not. If you feel you're missing pieces or there's things that don't quite feel right. I'm definitely leaning more into using what feels. If something feels difficult these days, I start questioning, is this difficult because I don't understand it, or is this difficult because I'm pushing against something that doesn't feel right, in which case I probably need to address that. From a fun perspective, it might be more fun. I mean, that's the key to any site, to any project. Enjoy it, right? If you're not enjoying it, don't do it. It is what makes streaming difficult, because if you're streaming things and that energy shows through, or lack of energy shows through, it starts to become, what's the word? Not contagious necessarily, but yeah. Okay, so new item. Disengaged, yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Requirements should show on the panel. On the panel. All right, off to work. Good luck all. Delta, thank you very much. Thank you for the chat. Thank you for those links. I appreciate you sharing those. Have a great day. I'll see you again. Requirements. So I will be streaming a little bit longer today. I have no hard stop today. It is a day off. It is Juneteenth. So it's a federal holiday. Which my employer is good enough to share. Requirements panel should display the current requirements list and should provide the ability to add new requirements. 06 20 2024. Somewhere along the line I got an empty user as well, which is worrying, but okay. So I create that, but I get a 502. Bad gateway. Nice. Nice. What causes bad gateway? So still got that open from books yesterday. So Ocelot has a post to planning items, right? API post. So API planning items post. So the route's there. Oh, hold on. Why is that planning items API 1? Service name. Okay, so, but service name is planning items API, so it should get there. I wish you could see that it routed requests. What's the alternative to Ocelot? Okay, everything's committed. Okay, I'm gonna. I can't really merge this knowing it's broken. There's another alternative to Ocelot. What's Microsoft's API gateway tool called? Anyone know? YARP? Is that another reverse proxy? Because one of the things I do have a problem with is the fact that the GraphQL API right now actually can't go through Ocelot. I think that's what I was thinking about. Yeah, API gateway. What's the difference between an API gateway and a reverse proxy? A reverse proxy acts as an intermediary between clients and servers. The clients can only call the backend service through the reverse proxy, which forwards the request. So API gateway is a subset of YARP reverse proxy. Because what I'm thinking about doing is being that I'm going to change things anyway, or being that I know that there's deficiencies, if I have to fix something along the way, I'm going to go and spend the time to build out the thing that I know I need versus sticking with what I've got and just moving forward with it, right? And trying to make it work. So I've got to balance the amount of effort it's going to take. Because with this, what I'm going to have to do, if I want to do it effectively, so I'm using Ocelot because primarily because well, Ocelot is the API gateway, and I'm using console to track the key value stuff and to track those services. So these resolve. So Ocelot resolves these services from console. So it's using the APIs for console to get this information. If I was to use YARP, I'd have to re-implement all of that. Potentially. So it might be a better option. Let's see if Ocelot's been updated to include GraphQL. Ocelot API gateway. Has it been updated? It has been updated. It's still actively developed. Doesn't directly support GraphQL. Developers can easily integrate GraphQL for .NET library. What does that mean? Also, it does support console, Netflix, Eureka, another service. Service registry, okay. I just got to learn the terms there. So is it won't support GraphQL, or is it that it won't? So I'm wondering there if it's more. So the challenge comes in that the GraphQL. So here I use 7285, right? But when I'm using GraphQL, my Apollo client is set up differently. This isn't the problem though, so I don't know whether that's worth looking at right this second. Let's go and have a look at NuGet packages. Okay. Mass transit is the only upgrade. I'm trying to keep all these dependencies updated to make sure that I'm not falling behind as well. What it looks like. I've got some partial updates. They're referenced. I don't think I actually need console installed in them. I think they can be. I think I've got them there unnecessarily. I'll have to review that later because those are, when it's in parentheses, those are tertiary. There's a name for it. I'm having a bad day for words. Wow. I have a feeling that's going to trip me up eventually. I'm going to panic about those though, because that's a bit more of a deep dependency. Okay. So bad gateway. So let's have a look at. What we'll do is we'll start it up and we'll actually have a look at the logs for the API gateway and see if the request gets there. If it does, we'll go from there. This configures authentication, so you can actually authenticate the requests at the API gateway level and bounce them before they even get back to the server. Okay, so that's running. Let's log out. Let's make sure everything's fresh. Sign in. Okay. So started up. Let's have a look at the debug for the API gateway. It's a noisy one. It's constantly polling for information, so this might be very difficult to capture. New item. I should see request hit the server. Just to make sure that we get there, let's go here and put a breakpoint here. The request should reach the server at the very least. 06, 20, 20, 06, 20, 2024. I need to make this a panel as well. Useful. Oh. No such host is known. Error connecting to downstream server. Interesting. So it is erroring at this phase, but why? Server 176. So the way this works is we have add Kafka using console. That's that. Add console. So we go and get our console configuration, and that specifies us here. Then we have a service name and a service ID. Let me close Godot. I don't need those resources open, right? So what's meant to happen is when I configure the actual routing, the API gateway resolves service ID or service name rather from the thing, and the service discovery feeds it back 7162, and it was giving it server 1 7162, which I assume is me anyway. So that's fine. Let's bounce console. Dot services dot ps1 down console dot services dot ps1 up console. So I think, if memory serves, this doesn't have any configuration stored, so this should kind of freshen up. So no services, no key values, right? So I need to add Ocelot configuration, and then we go to open in Explorer. We have Ocelot configuration. All right, save that. And Kafka configuration. Is this a Docker in a Docker environment where you need to use the host name rather than localhost? It is in a Docker environment, but it resolves localhost there because it replaced it with server 1. So it knew what I was talking about. But yeah, you're right. Although no, this isn't in a Docker environment because ultimately it resolves. The API gateway is the one running it. Console is pulling the information, so it gives the service back. But maybe that is the issue. Or maybe it's related to the issue. So if we start this up now, let's see what this does. Because I think that the problem was panning items API hyphen panning items API hyphen 1 as the name was wrong. I think it had kind of got confused and created the incorrect name. So you see planning items API. Oh no, it's done the same thing. Huh. Domozo, welcome in. Thank you very much for the follow. Appreciate it. So these services have started up. Planning, tenant management, tickets have all started up. So console's there. I haven't changed this, by the way, since this last worked. The only thing I've changed is the GraphQL endpoint, which makes no sense. So let's go back here. Let's go to the debugger and go to the API gateway and replay that. And it crashed again. Server 1 hyphens. Oh. It won't let me I killed it, but copy. I'll do better. No such host is known. I mean, it's not wrong. Server 1 is not known. So why is that now? So I must have updated the packages, right? So now it's resolving server 1, right? That's server 1. Oh, 172.21. Interesting. That's a problem. Especially if that's 172. Server instances, localhost 716, console. So that's giving it so server 1 is the console system. So why is it trying to resolve server 1 rather than the address given? Because what these should do is they should start up and register their address. Cool videos always. Keep up the amazing work. Jeffin, thank you very much for the positivity. I appreciate that. I always hope that other people can get something from what I'm stumbling through. So console is running in Docker. So that's why that's got the 172. So all of a sudden, it's not using this. It's replacing localhost with server 1. It's assuming that it's coming from console. But that's wrong, because this is service discovery. The whole point of this is for it to kind of resolve names to because I could have 3 or 4 of these instances running, and it could technically act as a load balancer, right, as well. So it should resolve this address, which would work because now that is localhost. So it's now. Can you add a point so you can access it? But that, again, that's doing the wrong thing. it should be resolving. It should be handing it back this, not server 1 pipe 7162 colon 7162. Because if you look, that's what it's done. It's determined it's trying to send it to server 1, whereas it should, because the service is running on localhost 7162. It shouldn't actually care about. So the way that this is working is Ocelot is my API gateway. Ocelot runs on 7285. From my client side, all my API requests go to 7285, right? Ocelot then, when I receive a request, looks up in console to get the address of the service I've asked for. So again, my console configuration, my Ocelot configuration, says, okay, well, if you get a request on this URL, ultimately it's navigating to this, but it's going to resolve this service name over HTTPS. So it's going to send that post to the planning items API / planning items, and that is planning items API is, I wonder if it's this that's causing the problem. I don't know why that's doing that, but I mean, ultimately, it is the planning items API service. So I don't think this name is doing me any favors, but it's not necessarily failing. So let me have a look at, so tickets and tenant management are fine. I mean, so we'll look at tenant management app settings. Tenant management API, service ID 2. Planning. Oh, that's why. That I didn't change, so now I'm going to bring console down again because yeah. So now we need the Ocelot configuration again. So we go back here, refresh that. There's no services. I go to key value. So I'm using console for key value store for this data. And I wrote my own provider for getting the Kafka routes, so that when all the services start up that need Kafka, they can be told, hey, go to Ocelot for configuration, because all the topics don't change, only the event types change. So I can use that. It means that I don't have to go into every single service every time I add a new endpoint, every time I add a new Kafka event or something. I can just go into one place, change it all, and it works for me. Right, so I'm using Ocelot for key value. I'm using console for key value store and for service discovery, right? But Ocelot is the one using console directly in this case. So again, what should happen is when I start up, it resolves this service address back. So it shouldn't actually be going through Docker at all. 990, almost at that 1,000 followers. I appreciate the new followers. Again, if you have any questions, thoughts, opinions on what I'm doing, if you want to see more or you want to understand what I'm trying to do, you're more than welcome to ask. This is quite a large project at this point, so it's a little hard to just divert onto a description every time, just randomly. So if you do care, if you are interested, I'm happy to talk about it. But again, I'm not going to divert every time because it's going to throw me off. Okay, so if we go back to console and go into the service, that looks healthier. Okay, but that wasn't the change. So again, because this is just a service ID, because if I run multiple instances of the same service, I'd use this ID to differentiate, right? So, but I could have 3 or 4 instances of the planning items API running, and they'd all report under the service. Their instance would be, the service name would be planning items API, right? Node name server 1. But again, localhost, see? It resolves as localhost. So if this doesn't work, I have a feeling, and I can just retry that one, actually. I have a feeling. No, it failed. Did it fail in the same way? It did. It resolved 7162 to server. So I've got a feeling that this is going to be a bug reported somewhere. Ocelot console server 1. No, bad gateway. Hey Dan, welcome in. How was your stream? Doing good. Doing good. I'm struggling with a little bit of a configuration issue, it looks like, right this second. Yeah, so what should happen is when Ocelot requests the service, it should resolve localhost 7162, and it was working like that. So either there's a new configuration, prefix, tags, routing intentions, routing, deploying items API. And that's fine because it's registered in this cluster, but it should resolve localhost. Yeah, so yeah, I'm making progress. The application, we're back on the application today, back on the Agile project management. Just did a massive overhaul of the GraphQL endpoints to get the queries working more efficiently, which does work and it works well, but now I can't save something. So it's kind of push and pull. This is looking better. This is looking correct. But it resolves this rather than this. So let's see. Ocelot using node name instead of service. Configuration, I config. Yeah, so that's so in the API gateway configuration here. I'm going to use Ocelot, add console, add config stored in console. My app settings here. See, I use Ocelot configuration. So I'm setting up the service discovery provider. So that's fine. Use Ocelot await. Console provider. Oh, they're two separate things. Are they? In order to tell Ocelot a route is to use the service discovery provider for its host and port, you must add service name. Okay, so that's what I'm doing. Right, so if we look at the configuration, Ocelot configuration, see service name, that says use planning items API. The only important thing to note is not to add HTTP or HTTPS to the address field. No, that's not that though. Service definition. That's service ID. Hold on. That might be a bit of my code versus their code, because their code wasn't. So address is service discovery address on service configuration. Add console service discovery. This is me. Console service configuration. Service discovery hosted. So this runs. Yeah, there you go. So it's just taking the host. It's not taking. It's when it resolves down. It's actually removing the scheme. So it's just using the host when it registers the service. This is my wrapper around building that. So basically, each service starts up, and it publishes. It has a running background service that like updates its service information, so that if this service stops, it or whatever, I can actually tell it it's in bad shape. Apologize if you're seeing ads. Okay. Service to register. So yeah, when we stop it, everything runs fine. So I am doing what they suggest there. I'm just providing the port and the host. Even though I'm building it all as one. So I've just created a wrapper class around doing that, basically. I could do the same if I was using Eureka or dynamic routing. Okay. But the problem still lies is that for some reason Ocelot is being given or console is being told to use so this cluster server 1 is in Docker. So that network address is the Docker address, right? But that's not the point. The service discovery should use this to look it up and identify the address it's going to actually go to. Because again, if I was pulling this from different networks or whatever, then all different services were starting up and this was hosted separately, it's giving it an address to resolve. So a request comes in and gets sent to the right piece. So I could run the services on different hosts or whatever. They resolve. And this way, I also don't need to care if the port changes, etc. I just register everything else, so I can mess around with these independently. That's why the API gateway is useful. However, why did I go for capitalization on that? This is all NuGet package updates. So the only thing I've actually changed is NuGet. Now I don't have any pieces in to update to call update. That is taking so much longer. So I don't know why this would have changed. So let's go back to Ocelot. Let's go back to their issues and sort by newest. Ocelot, global JSON, failure ratio, authentication, default timeout, generic polling. See, these are all back in 2023. There's only 3 issues added this year, and none of them are that. So is this me? Or is this them? Let's go. I know I haven't changed the configuration at all. The only change I just made was today, and that was just setting that service name correctly. So it's not getting here. I mean, we've all seen it work before. Service discovery is working because this is starting up. Our other services are running. So the only thing I can think is that something's changed in Ocelot, global configuration, downstream, upstream, base URL. I love how they set that up. Following is very basic Ocelot JSON. It won't do anything but should get Ocelot started. That ain't good. So I need to figure this out, right? So, because otherwise I'm going to end up with the need to have 2 ports accessed. Whereas if I really want to do the API gateway properly, routing everything through the API gateway is the right thing to do. So eventually setting up the GraphQL, the view service as an Ocelot, as a console registered piece will be necessary. So I really want to do this. But that again is not going to help me with what I need to do right this second. Routing. So if anyone has the ideas or anyone has experience with using things like Ocelot and stuff, I'm open to any thoughts. It definitely is resolving that, right? So if I look at that configuration, it's trying to get to, what it should be doing is this, and what it's giving me is this. So it's correct. It can't resolve server 1 because server 1 doesn't have a name. Hi Hexic, how you doing? Welcome in. I mean, I could cheat. I could route. I could put a local host entry in for server 1 and point it to localhost, but that would confuse things. I see pain on the screen. Yeah, so what I'm working on, I don't know if you've seen it before. I'm building this agile platform, as I call it. Basically, right now it's a planning tool. aimed at trying to get requirements for developers. I don't know if you've seen this piece before. DNS, there should be no DNS. There should be no resolution. So this tool is aimed at trying to gather requirements and getting information together to plan stories. So yeah. Eventually I will, yes. Once this gets past this phase, I will actually be able to do that, yeah. If so, there has to be DNS. So what it's doing, Rambling Geek, is, so I'm using the service discovery. So in the configuration, I configure a route. So Ocelot, which is actually the API gateway tool, is loading this configuration up. And when it sees a route that looks like this, and it's this verb, it looks up its configuration and it says, oh, how do I need to resolve this? So I'm going to go to the service discovery for this service name, right? I'm going to ask console for that service, planning items API. That's the service it's under, right? There's the service name. I'm going to go and build planning items API and build that route out, right? So whatever this resolves to, which this resolves to localhost 7162, it's going to give it an a service to call. So I could have, I could have like 10 instances here if I'm load balancing, right? It's going to give it an address and feed that address back. So what I'm expecting to see is localhost 7162. What it's actually giving me is server 1 7162, which can't resolve because server 1 is a name for this node, which actually is inside of Docker, right? So if I go to service instances, this is on server 1, right? So it's not really using any DNS. It's just a straight lookup to get it to. It's kind of using the resolve. So yeah, server 1 is 172.22.02. So it's trying to get, for some reason, it should be giving me this, and it's giving me this. So it's correct. I don't have a host of server 1 because I shouldn't do. I use some kind of ARP. What's ARP? Address resolution. I mean, it's not doing anything really clever. The API gateway the API gateway allows me to, so again, console is being used as a backing system for the API gateway. The API gateway is a service, is Ocelot, which is this. He says confidently as he, yeah, this is Ocelot, right? So Ocelot is the API gateway. So this allows me from the client side to have all my APIs represented as one layer, but the API gateway routes them to the correct service, right? So I can break them up, right? So Ocelot is the API gateway. Ocelot is being backed by console, which is providing it. So yes, it's doing some sort of resolution, but it's doing it within here. It's not doing anything advanced. What it should be feeding me back is the localhost 7162, which is the service name, the service's address. But what it's doing is feeding me back the server address. So it should be saying, oh, you mean you're looking for the planning item service? Oh, I have an instance of that running, by the way. Here you go. Because I could load balance this. It's on the server 1 node. It's available on the server 1 node. Oh, and here's the address. It should resolve this, and it's giving me this in place of the localhost, and I don't understand why. I haven't changed that configuration. Because if you can resolve the actual address, then you don't need to figure out the domain. I wonder in that config you can configure it to pass the IP address back versus the name. I mean, I probably could. I could probably change it to, well, no, I can't here. I could potentially do it here, but I don't have an IP address to know that. And that's the point. it shouldn't have to care. This is configured here. So that's the configuration, right? And that's what registers, and it actually registers this piece. It doesn't, it actually takes the scheme out. So I actually don't need that. I'm only doing that so it's a complete URL. But that is where my API is running on this machine. So the idea being that if I start this up and I want to change the port, I can change the port, I can do everything else. The API and the client don't need to care, right? So they never change. So in the client side of this, you'll see I just have the address, and that's the API gateway. So everything goes through the API gateway, even if it's planning or whatever, because again, on the server side, planning is running, tenant management is running, Teams is running, tickets is running, say. So it gives up, one unified API from the client perspective, but each one is a service of its own, and this can be built out. So it's not really doing much in terms of resolution. I haven't changed this configuration. It's just now returning me server 1, whereas it should be returning localhost, which would resolve. And it's Ocelot that's breaking, because Ocelot's the one that's throwing up this message. So Ocelot is being fed back from console server 1. So either Ocelot's asking for the wrong piece of information, or console is not understanding, or console's keys have changed somehow. I was hoping not to have to go into the Ocelot code, but I suppose I don't really have much of an option. Provide a console. I assume there was some sort of resolver. From scheme, from host, from port, console client configuration, registry configuration, DHCP. And I mean, this was working last week, right? I have updated. But no one's reported this issue, and this would be kind of a major issue to hit. So yeah, 2 weeks ago they did a 2330. Never do. Well, the point, again, my goal here is to make sure that by the time I come to a release, that I am on the latest back. No, I haven't tried rolling back because I don't know which ones I updated. But again, this is resolution. This is worth figuring out, rather than, because again, a rollback doesn't necessarily help me if I don't understand what I'm looking for when they do finally update. That'd be a little hard. Actually, we can figure this something out here, right? So if I go to API Gateway, Git, Thank you for the look, Mr. Jones. Update all NuGets. I have some wild inconsistency in how I refer to that, don't I? So the 26th of April. So actually I haven't updated this. Many updates. (23.3.3.2). So I could. Here's what we're going to do. Let's go back to 23.2.2. Right. Let's go back to edit API project. Let's go back to 22.2. 2.2. That should downgrade them properly. Okay, that's running. New item. Testing. Reverted ocelot. Lives. 06, 2024. Assigned to Jeffrey. This works, I'm going to be upset. Pending. Oh, it hit the breakpoint. It worked. So they did introduce a bug. Or I'm not configuring something properly. Well, that's not good. That's a major flaw. Three commits. That's not. Tags 23.2.2. So this is the only change. Apparently in 23.2.2 to 23.3.3. Is that what that's telling me? Let's do the opposite way. Okay, that's more. That's more like it. Partially verified. So what we're doing right now is going into let's figure out a open source project fix. Hopefully, maybe. Early removal. Routing RST. What's an RST file? Documentation, okay. Placeholder name and value. Move to primary constructor. And provide that. Placeholder. Remove old, replace query parameters. Routing. So I mean, it makes sense as a routing query string change. Placeholder names. But that's replacing placeholders. That's not building the string. Downstream URL creator. This would do it. Middleware. But I don't see where it's changed anything. When I call them middleware, then downstream request URI. So my URL. Given the downstream request URIs, my URL ABC. Given the service provider config, given the URL replaceable, return API products 1. Seems like a really naive test. That can't be a coincidence that that's been messed with. So do I create an issue? Or do I try and fix this is the question. So long term, I won't be using console necessarily. Customized console services creation. It's taking a while to load in. Or do I assume that like Hexic, that people are like, I'm not upgrading to the latest version if they're using it in any production instance, so I'm actually discovering something before other people have because I'm actually trying to stay on the bleeding edge. I don't necessarily know how to effectively fix this though, to do the contribution. And the challenge is, do I go off and try and do that? Right? Because again, it would be useful to try and contribute. But if I go off and contribute, how much time am I taking away from my thing? This is all new. the tests are on console. Should not return services with invalid address. Should use token. Should return service from console. Should not return services with invalid address. Should not return services with empty address. It can't be a coincidence this has all been added. Given there is a fake console service discovery provider. What does that have to do with the test? Then the logger has been called. Oh, we're using them in the range. See, I wouldn't even refer to the fakes in that concept text, because that would be like given a console discovery provider, right? Because it doesn't matter that it's fake. It has no bearing. We're in a test. Everything should be fake or mock or whatever. If no entries should log warning. Expected console provider, no service entries found. Yeah. because I can't see the actual taskbar, but I have a lot of icons down here, and I routinely click the one to the left or to the right of what I want, and I try to put apps that take longer. I just kind of tend to type them. The only one I have in there that takes a little while to start up is Blender. But I don't use that rarely. I use that rarely, so I probably don't even need it there. Yeah, I have a habit of clicking on completely the wrong icon. Yeah. Okay, so I've got it working. I'm going to add an issue, and let's see if they repeat. Because I'm going to have to. The problem is, if I add an issue, I'm going to have to. After upgrade to 23.3.3 from 23.2.2, service address is being incorrectly. What is this? What am I actually saying here? Being incorrectly. Cluster name of service address. Expected behavior. I am expecting using console. I updated it, bro. Fix it. Expected behavior. Resolving case service. Yeah, request. Actual behavior. Failure to resolve address as cluster name being used in place of service host. Steps to reproduce the problem. 1, 1, 1, and 1. Create a service. Console to map an API request. IE. Well, this is where I find out it doesn't take Markdown, isn't it? Code. Yeah, that's why. This is where one of the contributors maintains just comments skill issue and closes it. Been there before, have you? I deliberately don't do this sort of stuff all the time because I've seen too much of that. It's like going into Stack Overflow. Create a service configuring console to map an API request. Make a request to the gateway. Receive 502 by gateway. And then I'm going to copy. That's not there. Code. Specifications, version, platform, subsystem. That means not a jot. Same configuration is working fine on 23.2.2. Is it bad to do a bit of self-promotion? I can say, look, you can watch the stream and see it happen if you want to. Yeah, that's enough for now. Version 23.3.3, platform, Windows, subsystem. Oh. Oh, that was awesome. That did a great job of formatting that for me. That does wonderful. Yeah, let's see what happens. Either way, my system's working again. And I can move forward. Next challenge. This is the world's biggest replacement of a panel. This is just one of those stories that's just kind of, or one of those that I've intended to do something simple, and I've just snowballed through everything else. Okay, so with the application stack running, we need some loading screens, it looks like. Let's log out. We can sign in. And we should be able to see planning items. Hopefully that's not broken. Tell me that's broken. Come on. I didn't do nothing. Why is GraphQL failing now? Errors. Unexpected execution error. Data is null. So that I get. Headers. That's fine. Settings, authorization, apply. Oh. Data is null. This method or property cannot be called on null values. Oh, hold on. Did I end up with some bad data? Yes, I did. I'll be right back. I just need to check on something. Were you? I thought you'd be a TBD gamer. I'll be Will. Okay. So the problem here, I think, is this view is not going to. It says it's working. There's a data mapping issue. So let's stop the view API. So when I added that entry, then when I actually added the planning item, it did get through Kafka. It published through, and it actually got to this database. I think what's going to happen is I'm not allowing for that being null. I don't have a lot of redeems because I don't do very much in terms of things on the stream. I used to have things like project reviews and stuff, but being that I am so easily distracted, it's completely worthless putting points on it. So that's why there is not many highlights. And again, I'm focused on the coding, so the interactions with bots and stuff is not something that I spend a lot of time doing. I do have a bot. It's quite a evolved piece of software, but I just don't use it. So this is in the domain. I bet my entities for my view. Yeah, this is not nullable. So it's struggling to deal with the fact that that's null. That's what the problem was. I built a Twitch matrix and then stopped streaming. Yeah, you just need the right motivation. I think from everything you've said, you kind of want to stream. You just don't know what you want to stream, and then it is challenging to stream, especially if you're not comfortable with aspects. You'll get back to it though. Okay, so I bet this should work now. There you go. Okay, so now let's go back to the application. refresh, and we should be able to see the data. There we go. So we're going here now. The next challenge. I tried to stream, but it made me nervous, which made me tick more, which made me more nervous. And my whole stream was just me ticking. Yeah. I can imagine that is very challenging. Like, streaming makes me nervous, but for me, I outweigh it with, I get overwhelmed. What I'm doing on stream may be useful to some people. It helps me focus. And this may be inspiring or helpful to people, especially when I'm doing large-scale application development. I know it's not always interactive, it's not always fun, but it is something I am trying to show that this is how I would really develop a product, right? I would, well, with some minor changes. I wouldn't do it for 2 hours a day and jump back and forth all over the place, but I'm building this. The structure, at least, of this is realistic. Yeah, I'm right now. I'm trying to figure out. I need to start learning how to deploy this. I have no idea where to start. I am super intimidated about that part. I don't know. I think I need to ask for some help. I just don't know where to go, and yeah, that's going to be challenging. I want to write a C# Gittia API wrapper. I have no idea where to start, but maybe that's something I could do. Try. I'm trying to write a kernel panic for my OS, and it's drowning my brain. Yeah, I think projects that are fun are projects that you care about and aren't. I mean, to me, the passion here isn't necessarily planning; it's providing tools that get away from developers having to deal with it. Right? If you've got the passion and you're enjoying it, then you can carry on forward with it. If you're doing something just because it's something you feel might be useful and you don't really care about it, it's much harder to put that effort in. And oftentimes, Ramble Geek, just writing something and figuring it out as you go, you look back on, so much code is written so roughly. And the difference is, are you able to reflect back and understand what you did and change what you know needs to be changed to clean it up and make it more maintainable? Now you've gained the understanding. Or you're trying to get, because, with the game dev stuff, I spent so long worrying about doing it the right way that I just didn't do it. And now I've got into it, I might be doing things in there that people would think are horrendous. Such inefficient methods or such a terrible way of doing something, whatever. But I'm learning, I'm growing, I'm understanding bit by bit, day by day. I'm understanding a little bit more about, oh, I can do this. Oh, that relates to this. Ah, that makes sense. So you might not have an idea where to start. I mean, I'd assume with the API, right? Like set little goals, right? Can I authenticate? Can I gather information? Can I update? Can I do, just move forward bit by bit by bit and, add in, pieces as you need, and then look back and reflect and say, oh, well, now I'll see a pattern appearing. I can organize that differently. I can organize that. Yeah. I mean, I'm qualified game dev teacher, so when I chill in chat and see things being done in interesting ways, I like to help out. Sharing the knowledge is always good. Yeah, and people learn in different ways as well, right? For me, you can tell me to do something, but if I don't understand how to get there, I don't like sitting there and kind of struggling through. So what I tend to do is, Sorry, I'm just replying to something because we're getting to that point where um, sorry, but yeah, I don't like. I don't necessarily understand if someone's telling me to do something for all the pieces, and I don't like getting diverted by someone trying to direct me through each phase. I'm Let me go off and muddle through it. You can tell me if I'm on, in the right path, or give me a link to something so I can review it. But I don't mind fumbling through either, right? It's kind of my way. I'm comfortable with the fumbling through, and I've embraced that. I think I put in my stream description, I may not be the best developer, but I want to get better, and that's my only focus, right? I might not develop everything the way you think I should develop things. I might develop things that you think, oh, that looks horrible, but I'm sharing, 25 years of professional experience. Yeah, and that's key. That's key to me, right? So I don't need to be the best. I just need to be good and confident and feel that I'm able to get better, rather than worrying about, oh, would 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 my hero do it this way, or how would someone else do it better? Because that's what's held me back on game dev for so long, is actually worrying about doing it the right way, and in the end, it doesn't really matter. It does not matter. Okay, so let's see if we can get the requirements loading. You found 2 dogs playing. Hey Napalm, how you doing? There is no right way, just best practices. But even best practices, you have to learn and adapt to. You don't always get best practices down first time, right? Best practices, sometimes you have to do the wrong way to understand why the best practice is a best practice. Okay, so we have GraphQL loading. Oh, unit testing fun, fighting some issues with Azure and high configuration mocking. Oh joy. Unit testing with remote SDKs. So mocking them interfaces out. Mocking high configuration is an interesting one though. So when I load planning item detail, right? So we have here's planning item detail, and then we have the requirements tab. This loads the item and should show my requirements off of that item. The challenge now is, though, that I'm not necessarily loading that, am I? So my planning item store has a query, and I have an if should patch state. This is where I was last week, right? So I've actually gone full circle. I'm back to the original problem now, and it's not loading what I need. Because when I load the detail, I'm checking, should I actually load this object? And I believe that I'm probably missing something here. Yeah, I know what I'm missing. So annoying that the extension method to add the Azure clients for some reason cannot find a matching constructor despite the config value being provided. Cannot find a matching constructor. Sounds like quite an involved setup for a unit test. It's a DI registration thing. I'm starting to question whether I really should be unit testing these. You're testing DI registration? That seems quite involved unit test. Oh, yeah, okay. Oh, really? Okay. I'm taking to reporting these, so that's why they're taking a second to come on screen. There's no link because you don't get link rights unless you're a VIP or a sub. Spam. Bots. Block the user. Delete the message. Spam the user. There we go. So basically what I'm doing is I'm checking the last updated state. So the problem is that my last updated state on my model coming down is probably going to be set. So I don't want that, I want that. So now I'm actually back to, I've got what I need, but in that I do have, yeah, last updated. So my last updated is 12:59:59. Yeah. AirPods have died. Oh no. I don't like using wireless headsets when it comes to if I'm sitting at work. I just don't like using wireless headsets when I'm sat at the computer. I prefer things like that for movement. I spend stupid amounts of money on different headsets. So the problem is the current and the updated are going to have the same last updated, because I loaded that one in, which means I'm not loading the requirements because I'm not loading requirements in my initial data load. So after all of that, after several days of refactoring, fair enough, got some cheap AirPod-like headphones from Mankind for £12. They're great for the price, especially just listening to podcasts being spoken about. Nice. And good day, Sully. How are you doing? So, so after all that effort, right? The purpose of comparing this last updated, by the way, is am I actually needing to update this object? Because it might have changed since I last touched it. The problem is that in my initial load, I'm not actually pulling requirements. So I never display requirements because I don't load requirements in the first one. So if you look here, no, I do. Oh, that's updated. Yeah, I don't load requirements initially. The initial query has very little in it. And the idea is that when I click on detail, I should load more detail. So I have two options. Option one, don't load last updated in the initial query. Patch the object in so that I am comparing. So I know that I've got the latest version of the data when I click on it. Option two, goes somewhere even more convoluted. I don't know what the right one there is. Let's investigate. So basically what I need to do is in this planning service fetch all, right? I don't want last updated. What that should mean is when I click into one now, I should see requirements, because now it's gone and actually said, oh, now patching requirements. But if I click, so what was that? Add dialog for requirements. So if I click here and go here and click there now, this, hopefully, it should have the last updated mapped. So the current should have last updated and it should have requirements because it's got there, right? It should have last updated. So this now should just resolve the current, right? So step over, step over, step over. Okay, so that's doing what I want it to do. Is that a good thing to do? I don't know. So again, that means that I load the requirements, right? So the requirements panel is being loaded properly. Interestingly, I do need to do planning item detail at requirements. I need to move this button. No. That needs to go inside of there. And that needs to go there. I don't want to, if I don't have any requirements, I don't want to not show the add requirement button. Objects is possibly undefined. If item. There you go. There you go. Okay, so I don't want to potentially hide them if requirements isn't set. Okay, this should show when I navigate back and forth. So the way this should work now is if I add a requirement, should see a button to filter. Right. So the idea of the requirements is that I'm defining what makes up this planning item. When I open the planning items screen, I should see a filter for assign projects. When I click on assign projects, it should be offered a multi-select. And ultimately, I will also attach images here as well for the available projects. So when I create that now, what should happen and what isn't happening, that is, it should update here. I don't know why that's not happening. When I click back and forth, it should now appear. And the reason that is because now my last updated differs, and it then loaded that extra data in there. So this should be, even if I refresh now, that should be there. Because that's actually come through the server. I had a setup over the Steel series in the office, but the micro USB port has gone flaky, so I took them home to try and fix and not get around to it yet. It's on the do it later project pile. Oh, my daughter moves. You've been saying that for ages. Yeah, like you and streaming. The set you're thinking of were Ethan's. This is another set that's done the same thing. I have actually two pairs of old Steel Series headsets. The Arctis they were kind of comfortable. They're in a box somewhere right now. Okay, so requirements. So the next thing to do is figure out why requirements aren't actually. So this is a UI experiment as well, right? I want to determine, is this a useful view, right? Because again, putting everything down the right hand side, it might be challenging. Ultimately, I'm going to end up with some icons up here because I do want to create a detailed view of this. So again, always realizing how useful boxes are. Yeah. I have a lot of boxes. I have a lot of stuff. I have a large collection of video games, and unfortunately, not all of them fit on shelves. And the consoles I can't have on display because I don't have enough room to display all the consoles that go with the games. So I have a lot of boxes. Well, no, because I do have most of the games on display in this room. They're on shelves around. I suppose you could call them boxes. They're just boxes on walls. But yeah. So to call this done, I need to be able to see a requirement displayed when I've added it. The challenge is I should be updating when I add a requirement, right? It does a pop-up. Mm. Sorry, I'm talking about breakfast. I've waited for everyone else to be ready, so I carried on streaming. With the day off today, it makes it a little easier. So the dialog pops up. When I hit save, the store that I'm updating should be the same store. So the way this is being built is I have NGRX signal stores that hold on to the data. So the front end is using the signal store. It's not directly communicating with the GraphQL or anything. It allows me to do this disconnect and ultimately allows me to make it more testable. But it does mean that I end up with some weirdness when I don't understand how things are wired up. Rambling Geek I was, then Team Gamer mentioned something about me streaming or something. So the signal store, when I patch the state, it should update and fire a signal to tell everywhere, oh, by the way, your data changed. Right? That's the idea of the signal store. So everything has a signal attached to it, is my understanding. On key. So these are asking for on key press. Right, but you don't like that. On I really wish you could do that. I know you can't because it's completely different events, but it's fine. You should stream. I know of a sponsor who doesn't feel like they're getting a good return on their investment. We're going into a dark place. Key down. Interesting. Oh yeah, you can point about something. This is probably not the wise. That's what Discord calls are for. I should join the Discord calls more often. Unfortunately, I was busy with a work thing the other day. I want to fix this one thing and then I can get it. I can call it done. Doesn't feel like they aren't. Does that mean it does? So when I add a requirement, what am I missing? So the dialog. Yeah, that was it. That was absolutely it. I walked straight into that one. I should not involve myself with that conversation anymore. So when we do the planning items, so we have the service and we have an add requirement, right? So this add requirement gets fired, and what should happen is in the write feature, add requirement calls that, which saves the requirement up to the server. It gets the ID back, so this won't happen until the ID is returned. Then we get the entity back, and we should patch in requirements, and then this update entity should patch the updated requirements in there, which should trigger the signal, if I'm understanding correctly, to tell everyone, hey, your requirements have changed. If I put a breakpoint in here, you will see the requirements have changed. Actually, I put the debugger before, so I can see the item requirements before and afterwards. And it should signal, as far as I know. Unless I'm doing something wrong in the display side. So if I go into, it's easy to show it on something that doesn't have anything. So add new. So the requirement is, should see requirements. Requirement should show right above this button, right below. Right, so when I create now, so I've got an ID back, right? So that I do have the. Oh, that's why. No, that's not. That's a problem. That's a different problem for right a second. But the item has no requirements. So if I step over, the item requirements should look like this, right? And it patches in. Now, ideally, they show there. So obviously I just identified a bug. Why did that not? Why is result coming back as a track, not coming back as a tracked entity response? It should have an identifier. That's problem number one of all the problems. Tracked entity response, it should have an identifier. Right. So if we go to planning items post, we return a response with an identifier. Oh. Yeah, we want to fix that. Move to outer scope. Tracked entity response. Move to another file. That probably ends up ultimately. So what I'm going to do there is I'm going to move that up high enough in this project to be useful. And then if I find that I need that somewhere else, which I likely will, I'll move that up further. So I'm not moving it outside of the scope of this project until much later. So this needs to return a tracked entity responsive GUID, not just a GUID. And that becomes new tracked entity response. Really? I can't specify, I can't infer that? Yeah. That seems wrong, but anyway. But that's not my problem. That's not going to fix the challenge. That's not going to fix the problem. That's just going to solve that that's not setting the right ID. But, you know, no, it will fix the problem. It is the problem. It is the problem because this, no, because that's the planning item identifier. The requirements aren't tracked as entities underneath. If this works, I'll be amazed, but yeah. New requirement should show. Yeah, it's not working. Okay. So if anyone's new to the stream and has any questions about what I'm doing, you want to know more about the technologies or whatever, you're more than welcome to ask. It's a little hard for me to keep going into the description of this project, being that it's quite large. But yeah, so okay, so that didn't fix anything, which is disappointing but not surprising. If I was using the ID to track the entity, that'd make sense. But I'm not. I'm pulling out the entity. I'm only loading the entity out, by the way, because I need to patch in the requirements. I can't take the state as it stands. I don't know of any way of doing that yet. Maybe there's a way of describing that, but I don't think that would change much anyway, because this item, I'm only using it to get the current requirements out and patch these in. If anything, I'd expect duplication more than anything else. But again, if I go here, requirements are a pain. Why aren't you updating the store? They're clearly loading, right? So you can see requirements. I have what was there. I have this now. This is what it's going to patch. It just doesn't load up here. So the signal's not working, or hold on though. I'm going to try something different here. So right now, I pass in the item into the requirements. I don't load. So I would imagine what's happening is I don't signal to this that a change on a nested property has changed, because I feed the item in there. What happens if I load the item in this? Which seems nasty. Ultimately, what I want to do is I want to talk to someone who understands signal stores and data management on the client side a lot better than I do. Because I want to understand my design. If my design is flawed, it feels okay right now. It feels like it's working, but and I don't feel too much in terms of friction. So I'm just sorting out breakfast. So I don't feel too much in terms of friction, but I'm wondering if this needs to have its own entity loaded, and that will allow it to track it and update, because that's the difference. In the other screens, I'm loading the planning item multiple times, right? So on the left-hand side, I've got the planning item loaded, and it's the same planning item I'm referring to, but I have loaded it in the second one. So the way to determine that would be pancakes. Yeah, I'm ordering breakfast for my wife and daughter, so they want pancakes. Mm. Let me I need to finish this. I need to do the need to finish that order. Okay, let's do that. And then we have about 20 minutes. So one option I have is, instead of doing the input of this, I could do the identifier, right? So this could be the identifier, and this could be string. And then if I do read only store equals inject planning item store, I'm I'm really hoping this doesn't work. This would be bad. Constructor, and then this would be this.store.load all. I shouldn't need to do. I don't think I need to do that. Identifier, right? And then public item is a planning item. And we'll set that, and then extends on init. Is it implements or extends? Implements. ng on init. This.store.load detail for this identifier. Then item goes to this item equals item. So on init, so actually we've got to set that, haven't we? I think that can be removed now. Yeah. We'll guarantee by that time we get there. So now on planning item detail, this is identifier, and this is item.id. It seems more appropriate because then I could use requirements component anywhere. Where it seems bad is when I load the item up in a full screen view and I have these tabs. That might be kind of messy. Is it bad that key down that the yellow squiggles just trigger me to the point where I really want to get rid of them? I mean, I know that's what they're for, but I can't ignore them. So now if we go here and load up, we're still loading the requirements, but we're now making a separate request. Load detail 4 though, the amusing thing there is it's kind of optimized. And if I don't need it, I don't ask for that data, because the load detail 4 in the query feature, again, is, oh, do I have this item? Yeah, I do. Should I patch the states? Should I actually go and make, well, no, I'm not testing that right now. So I'm always requesting it and determining. So it is a bit excessive in that I'm loading it up. I could potentially, no, I need to determine whether I need to load it, because I always get the latest version. Oh, but that's not working now, is it? So that's loading this part up, but it's not loading this part up. Interesting experience. So the planning item detail, this item ID, does not reload. Oh, of course. Because it's not rebuilding that component. Oh, that's interesting. So that will only load on the first one. I don't want on init there. Oh, that's a challenge. So, technology I'm using here is not this one. I've already done that part. I've already done that part. We're doing that part. That part, that part, that part. Oh my goodness me. I have so much stuff. ngrx.io, signals. So the idea would be that when I change something, so it's like it's almost the same behavior. It's like it's, so in this case, it's obviously because when I'm loading the item, I'm not resetting that. I'm not reloading that ID. So I'm not monitoring that change. So is this a fact that I need to learn more about Angular signals? Can I kind of watch for it? Computed. But I think the entire point is that right. So effect. I don't think that is what I wanted to do, but the idea there being that I subscribe to when it changes. That's what I'm thinking. That's kind of what I want to do, right? So I'll see it instantly. Okay, that's working. Because I'm seeing this change. So that's already changed that behavior. So I'm listening to that and saying, oh, pull that effect, pull that thing out, right? So I'm passing the identifier, but when that identifier changes, I have a side effect. So let's give it a go. So go here, test it. No, that's not loading now. That was working, right? That was loading. Interesting. Oh. It was changing because I was actually loading the background. Once the item wasn't changing, so there's no actual difference on that object. But it's ID. Can I put a signal? Because I don't think I can do requirements. I don't think I can do... No, because I can't set it. Because that can't be signal... right, because that's not a signal. So what am I actually looking for here? Gemini. The challenge with this is the technology is so new, and even this is in developer preview, that this might not know. Humans review some saved chats to improve Google AI. To stop this for future chats, turn off Gemini apps activity. Okay. I'm not pasting proprietary stuff in here, so how do I monitor changing of and so the problem is the component loads once, it only loads once, and what I'm switching out is the data and that component. So that's why ng on init was bad, because it only initializes the first time I load that component up. Input signal, define a signal input for. And I'm making a mess with that. Monitoring change. So effect is the way. Oh, can I put that on there? This to identifier. But that's not a signal for that. That's the problem. Equals new input signal string. That's not a thing. Use the input function to define a signal input. Instead of the input decorator. No, that's not that. Define a signal input. Input signal's not a thing. Signal inputs with input, reading input values. Oh, just equals input. Reading input, optional signal inputs. Input. So it will always fire. So I just need to go back to effect. And then and get the value of the string. Okay. Okay, we load requirements. 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 So we're clicking back and forth, it's loading the right things. That's good, that's good. So the funny thing here is I might actually be able to go back to the way I had it and then trigger and then watch for changes and just set it as input, and then just do effect, and that might help. Okay, so let's test it. Add. Do you now update the panel? So now if I click away quickly before that gets through, it's still there. And there we go. So what I could actually do is I could go back to, instead of that, I could actually go back to that being a planning item, right? So then I don't have to have, so this can be item. And then I don't need to load this. Maybe. Because now it'll get signaled when it changes. So this should change back. And this planning item detail should be item is item. So the challenge there is these become that. This condition will always return true since this function is always defined. If this item object is possibly undefined. So again, this should load up just the same way, right? I shouldn't expect any differences there. But now when I add something, a new requirement, where's that breakpoint? Oh. Well, I don't think. Let's put that back to how it was. Let's put this back to how it was a minute ago. I'm not totally opposed to doing it this way, especially if it works right now. Identifier equals item.id. Because I'd rather have it working like this now than... see, it does work. It just didn't load in real time. Do you show now? Yeah. So it might not be ideal, but it does give me what I expect. So that does mean that I can now add a project, I can add a planning item, I can add some requirements to that planning item. So not to do really, but I have to ask, how do you come up with side project ideas? I need something to do in the evenings, free time. I have too much spare time on my hands with trial season coming to an end. I normally, when I'm coming up with side project ideas, I'm normally coming up with them based upon a need, right? So, and something I care about. So, like, if it's fishing, maybe you want to track something that you've done with, or you want to inventory your equipment, or things that you care about. It might be all sorts of random stuff, right? So I generally try and find something I care about. For this project, I do care about developer productivity. It's something that I really feel we lose out on all the time. So it is a passion, right? I care about doing this. I care about building this and seeing this idea through. I have this site. It's going to be bright white on the screen, by the way. I apologize. My friends keep giving me side projects. But again, do you care about them? So how much energy do you put into them, right? How much time do you put into them? So I apologize. There's no dark mode for this one. But it doesn't matter if they're already done, right? It matters that you understand what because you might have a different approach to it. You might see some of the things that you don't like in the way they do things, and you want to do it your way, right? It doesn't matter if it's been done before. A side project doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to necessarily come to completion. It doesn't have to fully meet the need. It just has to be something you can engage in, and it helps you grow your skill as a developer. So this project is a passion, right? I love video games. I collect video games, right? So this is genuinely my game collection, right? But I built this tool to help me analyze that and keep an eye on it, right? What the price is looking like. This is something that matters to me because, again, the actual need for this project came, and there are plenty of sites that allow you to track your games collection, right? There's plenty of tools out there for doing it. The need for this came from I wanted to track this, and if something were to happen to me, I want my wife to be able to say, okay, we're selling the games. What's the value of them, right? And what do they look like? So this uses price charting APIs to go and update the actual pricing of the games and what they're currently selling for in the state that they're in, right? Because some of them are loose, some of them, like StarCraft 64, that's a loose cart for the N64, currently going for about $82. So this allows me to do that. So find something you care about and don't worry about reinventing wheels. Sometimes that reinventing wheels gives you greater insight to when you're using things for real, or it might give you the chance to use a technology that you use in your workplace in a different way and experiment with, oh, I think it could be done this way, or, oh, I've just learned something about how to use it better. So embrace the side projects. Don't worry about failure. And then side projects become a bit easier. There you go. Yeah. Yeah. And again, if you keep the passion there, right, you got to keep the energy for it. And don't aim too big. Like, to me, if I say I want this full platform and I'm not building on it incrementally, I'm going to find it harder to keep motivated. You can't fail with side projects. I think the biggest difference. I think we all do. There's plenty. I mean, just for clarity, that game tracking app, that is like version 5 of that application. I've got another 3 versions of that in various forms. I use it as kind of right now. I kind of use it as an experiment with new technology because it's a data set I understand. I have the data available. It's a large data set. It's 1,600 and something games, right? With many copies. So it's a data set that's complicated enough that I can actually pick up a new technology and tinker with it. I have a Flutter version. I have an API version of it. I have a version that's hooked up into IGDB, and I can query extra data. I can test different UIs and stuff. So there's all sorts of reasons why I do that. But again, it's something I care about and I understand. So, but I've written so many different projects over the years that I just never use. The reason that's whining at me is I could do it this way, I believe, and it would still function. I think getting focused on the failure of a side project is more harmful to you than actually finding side projects. But if you're building something just to care, just to do it, you're likely going to take that attitude. It's going to be difficult to apply that. And Mr. Jones, I wasn't being difficult before. Like, when your friends keep giving you side projects, do you actually? I mean, I know you work on them. Sometimes you stream some of them, but do you actually carry on? Are you actually building them still in your spare time? And how much energy do you have for them? Okay, so actually there's an important piece here I need to do first, right? revert ocelot 23.3.3. The most part, yeah. That's cool. To 23.2.2 has issues with routing in latest version. Unless I get distracted, like I am now, but this is normal work time. Yeah, like I like taking on side projects for people if I have enough clarity. Okay. But it's got to be, again, it's got to be energy, right? Not distracted me. That's the purpose of the stream. I don't mind getting diverted on this. That needs an explicit commit. That's endpoints planning. I think these are updating NuGet packages. Update Fluent validation packages. Yeah, this stream is. I don't mind this stream talking about stuff like that because it matters to everyone, right? Everyone has side projects, like you said, the graveyard, right? We all have projects that we that just go off and never complete. Breakout, tract, entity response, do endpoints, require returning an identifier after creating, promoted, tract, entity response, do record, and it in items. And requirements. Update planning, service configuration, view, use correct, service ID. That, although with hindsight that wouldn't have made a difference, it just now it means it's more consistent. Last updated is nullable. Or planning item. Technically, last update is nullable for everything, so that's bad. And then we have get requirements updating in use latest version of I feel that last updated change, this one here, is a bad change because it means that if you were coming to this code base, you wouldn't understand why it wasn't set the first time. You'd have to look in there and be like, well, hold on, we could just add last updated there, and you'd break the entire application because it would never load latest data. So I feel that there's got to be a better way of doing that. So as we move forward with changes and adding more requirements and stuff in, then I'll probably reflect back on that technique because it doesn't sit right this second. Alias ID identifier to keep client compatible. Signal stores don't have definable requirements uses signal to load the planning item. Again on ID. Change input style. And I probably should refer to that. Okay. Push the changes. That's a lot of changes to set on my machine. Okay. So with that done, requirements are loading. I'm able to add new requirements. So I'm kind of the annoying thing here is since I began this overhaul of using PrimeNG, of doing all this layout change, etc., I'm now back to where I was a month ago, essentially. But I've learned a lot along the way, right? I've got a lot of things in there. So the next step would be to add additional pieces here, maybe do a detail screen. I think that might be more useful, doing a detail screen. Requirements I need to start building out though. So I need to be able to add screenshots to requirements. So I'm going to have to talk about that because I think I'm going to use, I need to look at interacting with something like AWS or Azure for storage there. Or at least creating some sort of provider interface where I can abstract where I'm storing the actual files. But screenshots, designs, mockups, etc., are very much a part of the requirements. And if I don't implement them now, it's going to look incorrect, and requirements will never have quite the feel that I really want. So, yeah. But anyway, my breakfast has arrived. It is 10:30, so we got a 3.5 hour streaming. I will be back tomorrow. We're going to continue on with this. I'm going to get this merged today, add a little bit more potentially, try and get this working. I think it's heading in the right direction. I think I'm making some progress now. I feel like that GraphQL change today was a good positive change. Well, today, the last week. Using the views, getting GraphQL involved there, getting those date timestamps now. So everything's using UTC. That was the intention. So that GraphQL stuff is there. As always, if you have any questions or thoughts or opinions about this, you're more than welcome to join the Discord. I'm happy to share discussion around this. I'm happy to let you see some of this stuff, but it's not open source because the project is at this point, we're 45 projects in. This is not something that open sourcing would do very much good for you. It's a little too heavy to just say, hey, go off and do this. And I don't want to spend that time, if I'm being quite honest, trying to set it up for someone new, right? Someone new being some random person who wants to check out the code. There are components, and if you feel there's components you see that would be helpful to share as a separate library, I'm happy to break them out. But yeah. So anyway, I'm going to raid over, and I'm going to raid BBB. I know he's not sat at his desk right now, but we're just going to go into BBB's stream, being that that's where I'm going to go hang out for a bit. Later on, One Lion should be streaming, so I would highly recommend checking out One Lion. I'll be hanging out there in a little bit as well. But yeah, let's go raid BBB, and I hope everyone has a great rest of the day if I don't see you around. And yeah, take care. Thank you very much for hanging out, and see you again soon. Bye all.